Hello, my name is Michael Eulis, and I'd like to welcome you to WFX webinar entitled Rekindling the Spirit of Servant Leadership. I'm the president and founder of the American Institute for Servant Leadership, and I'll be your host today. First, we're going to start looking at things that we call barriers to servant leadership. Why we don't see servant leadership anymore, not only in our churches, but in our society today. Many of the reasons for that is the fact that we have what we call the worldly view of leadership, that we've allowed the world to teach us what leadership looks like rather than us teaching the world what it looks like from a Christian perspective. Then once we talk about that, we're also going to talk about the fact that we many times have unclear objectives of what leadership in the church is supposed to accomplish, what our role is and what we're supposed to be doing. Lastly, we will try to fix others, but never take a clear look at ourselves. We spend a lot of time trying to fix others and never take a clear look at ourselves. Let's get that one out of the way right away. Remember, this class, this webinar, is a leader, and Andrew is watching. It is not about them, it's about you. And we have to begin to ask ourselves this question: what part of the problem, what part of the solution do we own by taking ownership of it? This chip is, for the most part, a tangible thing. Try to make it tangible by sending people to school and letting them get degrees in what we call many times management. But what we is that when they come out with a degree in management, they typically can manage things very well, but leading is not something that they're very strong with. And for that, it has to do with the fact that we're not teaching them the right things in the school of management, if you will. There are two sides of great leadership, and that's the management side and the leadership side. But servant leadership combines both of those to make a product or an output that's just an incredible view. A way of looking at it is this: you manage things and you lead people. We fail when we begin to look at people as things and we try to manage them as opposed to lead them. So looking at this typical definition of leadership that the world has taught us over a period of time. The world definition is getting things done through people. So looking at all the people that actually that definition will allow in. Dictators and things like that. You start looking at back in history. King would have been a great example of, he got things done through people. So was a servant leader? Absolutely not. What we find is that he falls in the same realm as many of our modern day dictators or tyrants, like say Hitler or Saddam Hussein or someone like that, that we get things done through people. They do it through fear or they do coercion. And the model is that once fear is gone, the activity or whatever the people are being led to do usually stops. Or put another way, if the coercion is gone, so if they're trying to purchase it by saying, okay, if you do this activity or you accomplish this goal, we'll pay you this much. With that type of mentality, of course, that the world teaches us today, then we find is that the minute that amount of pay doesn't meet our needs, the activity begins to slow down or to stop. Great examples of leaders, and looking at the greatest example of all, Jesus Christ, we start looking at that leader, what you need from him. He's a perfect example of leadership. He had a good blend of being strong and holding his heart strong standards at the same time being very compassionate with folks. And so that's that blend that we're beginning to see this thing called leadership. And it's a lot different than getting things done through people. Understand from that is that he set something in motion with 12 folks. And after 12, you can begin to look at now Christianity being the largest religion on the planet today. He set a vision in motion that require made of fear, doesn't require coercion, made of payment robbery. It becomes part of who they are. And that's what leadership really looks like. We've learned that there are many people today that are in charge that aren't. We've also learned that there are many leaders who are not in charge. What we learn from that is that leadership does not require title, and never let a title be the thing that validates you as a person. I mean, many times I can't do this because I stay fill in the blank. I'm just a secretary. I'm just a member. I'm just a committee member. I'm just the associate pastor. I can't do those things. We have to observe this, that we're all leading all the time. We're either doing it well or we're doing it poorly. We have to move that word just and get it out of our vocabulary, because what that does is take away from our ability to lead. Anytime we action, especially today as Christians, anytime we take any action influencing others, where other people are observing who we are, what we do, and therefore we are actually influencing them in their decision about Christianity on a daily or an hourly basis sometimes. So we have to remember, we have to remove the word just and say, this is who I am, this is what I represent, and know that we're on stage all the time. We either do it well or we do it poorly. To find out, Arthur Crowley put it this way in his book called Heroic Leadership, is that leadership is who I am as much as it is about what we folks want to come to us. We teach a number of classes throughout the country on leadership, and they want to come with their notebooks in hand, and they want to get a checklist about, okay, what do I need to do to be a leader? Check 1, check 2, check 3, now I'm a leader. And they'll certificate for sitting through our class, and it's a nice frameable certificate, but the problem is that that certificate, only as I've been to school and been exposed to some of the values that servant leadership, or some of the values of servant leadership. What is that certificate does not make you a leader, no more standing in a garage makes you a car. It is not about something that you do, it's about who you are, and do you care about the people that you're serving. See themselves and the people they serve as heirs, not slaves. Heirs to something greater than what they have. We need to understand that when people are owners of something, just like the first slide, we have to ask ourselves what part of this or this situation or this solution do I own, and not taking ownership of it. We understand that we see that leaders see themselves and their people as heirs to something great, not slaves to something to do. So they see them and prepare the next generation to be owners. It changes the whole dynamic of the way they lead and what they lead. Leadership is an art form. It's about power. It is not, as one writer put it, it is not the same as the exercise of power. Leadership is an art form, a thing that is very tangible, and but for that reason, there's nothing in the world that can defeat it, because it's the example of himself. So, a good definition of leadership today. What does leaders look like? They're first countercultural and counterintuitive. That means that they are different than the average person out there. It means that they are different than the culture. They think, they act differently, because what we end up being mirror images of one another through whatever training process we go through, and look at what made one person successful. We say, okay, well, we're going to take that. Maybe then I can be successful too, and we end up being copies of somebody if we're not careful. What we do there is that what we're trying to do is make ourselves successful. But we know that servant leaders are not driven by the need to promote themselves at all. The unwavering commitment to develop others to their fullest potential, to them to be the very best that they can be, for a way for them to lead others to do the same in the next generation. They're often described as being both steel and velvet at the same time. That is, that they demonstrate empathy and care for their fellow person, but hold themselves in organization to extremely high standards. Look at Christ and see his image there. Steel, velvet, at the same time, demonstrating empathy for people, no matter who they were, what part of society they came from. But never let his own disciples fall below the standards that he had set, and understanding that what sin really looks like, what the violation of the law looks like, and that while he said, I did not come to abolish the law, I came here to love and to serve and to heal. And what he began to help us see is that there's two sides of this commitment to a set of standards and grace, if you will. Now, development is just the grace involved in life. So we start great leaders through history, and one that comes up, well, we start looking at, of course, I'm reading this during President's Week, the days of Abraham Lincoln and George Washington, and we look at Abraham Lincoln, and one of the writers that wrote about him, a guy by the name of Carl Sandburg, said Lincoln that seldom on earth had there walked a person that had been both steel and velvet at the same time, which description of Lincoln. Another way he described him was hard as a rock and as a drifting morning fog, meaning that he had the ability to be very, very rigid and holding people to a high set of standards, but at the same time having great empathy. Daniel Day-Lewis described his role in playing Lincoln in the movie Lincoln. He described him when he began researching. He said he realized that what Lincoln had was he was in love with thousands of people that he ever met. He just loved them. He had this care for them, which drove him, which began to see shape his life. So this servant leadership really looks like. It's by deep care for the person. So when they leave the organization better than when they joined it, and they poise for greatness for years to come. And what we learn from that is that being leaders, when seeking power, they might be great leaders. In other words, they might lead the organization to great things, but if they see themselves as the only person capable of that, and they don't prepare the next generation when they leave, and eventually they will leave, then have as a vacuum, and now the organization struggles to continue on, and sometimes will falter because the organization is not prepared. He tells him several times in Scripture, I prepared you to do greater things than I. And he's telling his disciples that there's going to be a time when you're going to do this, and I'm not going to be here. And so he prepared the disciples to do that, and then the disciples then prepare others, which is the model that we're beginning to cover here, if you will. Simply strive to do the right things at the right times, in the right ways, and in the right reasons. That's what they look to do. This is sort of a test, if you will. So, what's the objective to servant leadership, or today's church leadership? Is it to gain more members, or volunteers, to put rear ends in the seats on Sunday? Is it everybody's doing it right? If that is today's servant leadership, it might be the first indicator that's why we're missing the mark. We're missing the mark because our objectives are wrong. We're headed in the wrong direction. Objectives of servant leader or church leadership should be right out of Scripture, Matthew 28:19, and that says simply this: "Go therefore and make disciples of all the nations, baptize in the name of the Father, of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit." Several years ago, to tour the country and speak with just not thousands of pastors across this nation, various denominations, various congregation size. I asked them this question. I asked them, how to make a disciple? What does disciple look like? And hundreds or thousands, if you will, of pastors I interviewed, what I found is that every one of them had a different definition of what it looked like. And many of them struggled to say, I don't really know what that means. They were convinced of it is not the responsibility of the senior pastor. It is responsibility of the senior pastor to set the example and to set the stage for this to happen. But it is our responsibility to go and make disciples of all nations, which means that we need to help them become people that are disciplined in the faith, people that take and get disciplined thought and take disciplined action, and therefore they serve the world to show the world the Savior through them, if you will. And then baptize them in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. So as people decide that they see the Father through you, that they want to be a part of that. And that's what the goal of church leadership is. So how do we get back to that? How do we go back to that? Well, first, we have to understand that there are three elements that will help us get back to that. If a magic bullet or a sprinkly powder or something that you sprinkle over people, that'd be a great product to sell, but it's just a little elbow grease and quite a lot of work to get us back where we were and where we've been to where we need to be. Combine those things with these elements, which I call education, encouragement, engagement. Elements will begin the process of helping us refocus on what real true servant leadership looks like. Look at the word education for a while. I've worked with churches over the number of years that we've been around, what I found is that it's just incredible the lack of understanding of what Scripture really means, lack of understanding of the Scriptures at all, understanding of the history of the Bible, any of those things. It's ultimately important to us to share the Word. If we can't share it, and to ask people something that they have. So if you're out and you have the opportunity to share, many people don't because they feel like they're not prepared. Now, many times, the generations of people who aren't prepared prepare more people to not be prepared. And in Luke 6 says it simply like this. Luke 6:39 through 40. He told him in this parable, can the blind lead blind? Will they repent? The student is not above the teacher, but everyone who is fully trained will be like their teacher. And what he's saying here is that we can't allow teachers to be in places, people that are teachers that do not understand the Scriptures, do not understand the Bible, to be teaching that. We have to be one and visit this true mission of making disciples, sometimes learning how to be true servant leaders. See, so it's just a balance of two questions. Definitely. Well, are we getting along, which is what Jesus talked about in great deal, length, about how we treat each other, neighbor as yourself, and how well we're progressing toward our mission, and what mission to disciples. So how do we measure that? We have to measure that in disciples made, and are we creating more people that create that? We don't understand that as many times we just jump into church, we go to church, and we, as one put it was this, that basically we, rather than be in love with Jesus, we have a date with him on Sunday. We come on some mornings and we visit with him for an hour, and then we go home. Well, with that, we typically will forget what it means to form a team, this church, if you will, that creates disciples. So let's look at what it takes to create a team and what that looks like to make a strong team. First, there was a researcher back in the 70s, a psychologist, if you will. His name was Tuckman, who created a model of team formation. He said that every team he ever observed went through 4 steps: forming, norming, and performing. And he described them as being steps like that were like stair steps. In our time today, it's more cyclical. In fact, a good friend of mine, pastor in North Carolina, shared with me this model that I began to use and actually then begin to build on, if you will. And he says that it's more cyclical than it is stair steps, and she's absolutely right. This forming, storming, norming, and performing, the cycle continues. Anytime a person is removed or added, what you find is that this cycle will start over. So what do the 4 stages look like? First stage is simply this. When we form, we have to get to know who I am and whose I am, who I belong to, who I am, what unique things do I bring to the table. And then if we begin to do that and we allow ourselves to get to know each other, then we start toward our mission. The natural next step for us to do is engage in this thing called storming. And your views, your opinions, your wishes, your needs, and your desires don't match mine. You don't honor me. Therefore, we spend our days arguing about the color of carpet in a sanctuary, the type of music that's being played, the use of a Sunday school room that's no longer being used for anything, but because it was donated by someone in the church hundreds ago, we can use it for anything other than what they donated it for. Those things that most people go to over, they wouldn't even think about suffering a paper cut over. Things are so irrelevant when it becomes focusing on the mission that what we end up doing is to see that it's a distraction from the real mission. What are is to create disciples, not create members, but to create disciples, and not to create groups of denomination. In other words, to create more Methodists, to create more Presbyterians, is to create disciples, followers of Christ. So we understand how to do this storming thing, which again we deal with that quite often in many organizations. Once we begin to value people there, only can we then move on to what's called the norming phase. The team formation process is when we review our boundaries. We then make it clear what we are about and what we're not going to be about as an organization. These boundaries are very clear because it helps not only understand what our limits are, but it helps us understand how far we can go, which changes performance. And performance is what we're talking about. Performance is what we're talking about, moving from what we call the good things to doing the good things. By that, before we get into a discussion, many times people will say, well, salvation is not performance-based. He is not making that argument. But to be as a result of being a follower of Christ, he's asked to do certain things. In Matthew 28, he says, go make disciples. So that's where I'm coming back to. What does it mean to perform, to go make disciples? We had one church that we were working with many years ago, these guys to death, but they discussed what their main focus for the year was, and it was an event like a bake sale or rummage sale, something like that. And they spent the entire year doing that. They were very, very successful at doing that. And so we started talking about what money do you raise, and it was like in the tens of thousands of dollars that they get from this rummage and bake sale one year, and they spend a lot of time devoting to being their congregation and doing that. So, well, that's fantastic. What do you do with the money? And they said, well, we put it in the youth fund. In the youth fund, I said, well, that sounds like a noble cause. I mean, this is usually the older folks doing the rummage sale, and they're giving money to the youth. I said, the mom's right. He said, well, yeah, the pastor said, it seems right. The problem is we don't have any youth. On doing this thing that we've always done, that we've lost focus on who we are and who we are to the point we don't even know why we're doing the things that we've been doing all along. So our job is to help, as leaders, to help move people from doing good things to doing what God has called congregation to do. And what we see is divided in half. On the side is all about our preferences. It's all about what we prefer, who I am and whose I am. Not that they're not important, but about me, my views, my opinions, my wishes, my needs, my desires, my ideas, my plan. And the hand side of this equation, all about purpose. A leader's main role is to help move people from preference to purpose and keep them focused on the purpose of moving forward, if you will. Second of this is called engagement. I use the verse 3, 5, and 6. Trusting the Lord with all your heart, and do not lean on your understanding, and all your ways acknowledge Him, and He will make straight your paths. Leaders and understand the power of engagement. They understand the power of their life over to God and allowing Him to be the one to guide in their paths, to be the lamp unto their feet, if you will. What we understand that because we haven't and understood this method of engagement, three types of members. My friend Al Winsman discusses these three things in his book called Growing an Engaged Church. And he says there are three types of members. One is called the engaged member. This is the member we're actually trying to create, because these people, and if you get in a technical way, it has it laid out, is that these members are the members trying to create. These are the disciples, the people that are growing in their faith. They're loyal, have a strong psychological connection to the community, to the church, more committed, more likely to serve in their community, to share their faith, more likely to understand and embody this lifelong disciple development, understand what that's all about. Unfortunately, we have to acknowledge that there are other types of members in our church. Most we've created our own because we don't even understand how we've done it. But most people come to church wanting to be this engaged member. Some of them may just turn and they become what we call the not engaged member. They might come to church regularly, but they're not psychologically connected. They're just there. They're out there for an hour on Sunday. They're sometimes more of a more social than a place of worship. They see who's coming to church, who's not going to be there this week, those kind of things. And then they will give themselves moderately, but not sacrificially. Where each member typically will give very sacrificially, both of their time and their resources. And these folks might leave just without warning. In other words, they see that they have a need to be connected. They don't see their connection has any value at all. So they may just get up and leave warning. One day you that the doors swing in and they'll be gone, if you will. This type of member know who these people are. We call these people actively disengaged. These people are physically present, but they're psychologically absent. They're physically present, but psychologically absent. They're unhappy with their church, and they insist on sharing that unhappiness with just about everyone. People, cave dwellers. And what do we mean by cave dwellers? Cave is an acronym that simply stands for constantly against virtually everything. People constantly against virtually everything. No matter what you roll out, no matter what you say, these people are going to be against it already. And they don't mind telling everybody in the neighborhood, everybody in the community, how bad their church is, how bad the pastor is, how bad the choir is. They're just actively disengaged, and this is their sport. Here's the thing to remember. These once were engaged. These were the folks that were engaged at some point, that they got to this point by reason. And we again ask ourselves, what part do we leaders own? Had understood the encouragement part of the equation. Verse 18 says, therefore encourage one another with these words. Live in a world today that expects perfection from imperfect people and does not grace. We're adding to people that can't provide. Perfection only provided by one person who ever walked on this earth, and he's the one that will come back one day and take this earth back over. But all we do is pursue His grace, His perfection. Understand that we can't marry that world. We cannot expect perfection from people that can't provide it from us. We've had our validation through Christ. We cannot have our validation through people, but they're imperfect people, and we have to understand that. So understand that we are hardwired for three basic needs. These basic needs are simply this: affection, belonging, and recognition. Everybody needs to know that they're loved. Everybody needs to know that they belong to the organization, that they have a place. And belonging is different than being welcome. Belonging is different than being welcome, and that welcome is, okay, here's a donut, here's a cup of coffee, here's a place to sit down, here's the hymnal. Hope you enjoy it. Welcome. Belonging is knowing that you're missed when you're not there. It's knowing you're missed when you're not there, and that's important. How do we know that? People call us, people check on us. People wonder why we're not there, because the body is not complete. That person is not there, and we have to acknowledge that. When a person doesn't feel that, they feel engaged, they don't feel the need to be there. And last but not least, this thing called recognition. We need to begin to remember that it's important to let people know when they get it right, when they do things well, when they do something that's encouraging to us. And it's important to know that when we provide those three things to people, we find that people will beat on the doors to come into our organization, because the world does not provide those. These things that Christ provided while He was on earth is the model He showed us. I'll show you that in just a moment. Many times we have to understand that people are different than you. I'm in law enforcement. I spent a number of years in law enforcement, and we have to acknowledge that everyone is different than you. We understand that when you look at a fingerprint, it's quite unique. You can statistically look at that uniquely, and it's validated in many court cases that if I find a fingerprint, I can put you on the scene in a certain situation. We see it on television all the time. Fingerprints are coupled with this thing called DNA, which says that you're 1 in 260 billion people that would have that same DNA. So statistically speaking, you're very unique. However, Gallup organization looked at the behaviors and talents, and they looked at when you look at behaviors and talents on one another, what determined is that you are unique 1 in 1.4 million people. What's important? First, that means while you might be the person who runs the kitchen at your church, when else comes in to run the kitchen and they do it different from you, but they're getting the mission accomplished, doesn't mean that they're wrong. It just means that they're different. They go about things differently. They go out. They have different thoughts. But the issue is, where's their heart? Are they're going about things and they're actually accomplishing the mission, even though they may not be doing it differently than you. Just who experience a pastoral change. When pastoral change comes in, we sit back and go, well, you're not like the other preacher. You're like the other preacher. We really like the other preacher. Well, the answer is absolutely that. They're not going to be like the other preacher. While they may be a preacher, they're going to be unique in 1.1 and 1.4 billion people unique just based on their behaviors and talents and their gifts alone. So we have to be that, and we learn from that is simply this: never yourself as a measurement of people. People know that they got it right, but many people never hear it ourselves, and we'll see them doing it the way we would do it. We acknowledge that it actually has value. It's easy to find people that fit one of three categories. I love the way it works. That people that like me, I value them. I can say you got it right. People like and are like me. Okay. Say it again. People that like me, people that are like me. It's easy to find value in those people. However, it becomes a little bit more difficult to find value in these people. People that don't like me, people like, and people that don't all like me. Maybe they're a different sex, maybe they're a different race, maybe they come from a different socioeconomic background, maybe they're a different denomination, maybe they don't believe in Christ at all, they don't have value. Absolutely not. You're going to find that many people out there that aren't believers are very wise people. They're very talented. They're very generous people. They understand the value of having a personal relationship with Christ. And what we do, we want to say that those people are not valuable in the kingdom because what? They're not like me. They've not yet seen that. Guess what? Our job is to simply share the love of Christ with people just like that. Jesus showed that and demonstrated that the entire time he was here. For this entire thing, as I can look at this, what Jesus did. Remember that he said in Luke 30:21-22, when all the people were being baptized, see, Jesus was being baptized too, and as they were praying, heaven was opened up, and the Holy Spirit descended on him in a bodily form like a dove. And it came from heaven and said simply, "You are my Son, whom I love." Where is affection, belonging, and recognition modeled by the Master in Scripture. Understanding the Scriptures and how they apply today are key to our success in making disciples. I thank you for attending. Thank you for spending time with us today and taking time to listen to this webinar. If we can ever service to you, please contact us at the number you see below or on the web at leads.org.